Hello everybody, this is Kostas and welcome to your 23rd Photoshop tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to teach you a little bit about blend modes. And remember in the previous tutorial when I talked about layers that I told you that you could imagine them as being transparencies stacked on top of each other? Well, in this tutorial we're just going to take it a step further and we're going to say that blend modes are as if you actually had those transparencies made of different materials. So imagine that transparency was made of plastic and another one was made of gel, for example, and you could just mix them together and get a different result. So let's just go ahead and have a look. Now over here are your blend modes. Now most people go on the web, they view a tutorial and it tells them, just use this blend mode. But they unquestionably take that. They don't think of why they should use this blend mode. And there's a neat way to actually go about doing this. And the first step is to actually divide those blend modes into categories. And those categories are defined by those lines over here. So by knowing what each category does, you know why you're actually using a certain blend mode, and you don't actually have to learn what each one of those blend modes does. So the first category over here, normal and dissolve. Normal is just the normal way of viewing the layer, just as we do right now. And dissolve is basically only has to do with opacity. And when you have a lower opacity, it creates this pixelated effect over here, as you can see. Now, the second category right here is called the darkening category, and that is because no matter what layer you put on top of another, you always get a darker result. Now this third category is exactly like the second one, except you always get a lighter result. Let's just have a look. Darken and lighten. And you can see that in the first one, in the second category, we got a darker image, and the third one we got a lighter image. Now this fourth category is called the contrast blending modes, and basically what they do is they always increase the contrast of your image. And as you can see, you get this increased contrast. Now some of them may actually increase it a lot more, but basically that's the idea behind them. Now this fifth, I guess. Yeah, fifth category is called comparison blending modes, and they actually find differences between your upper layer and the layer below it, and they use those differences in order to blend your layers. So let's just have a look. Yeah, and that's actually quite a weird one. You're not going to see it used that often. And the final category is called an HSL or tonal blending modes, and what they do is they use the upper layer to edit the hue, saturation, color, and luminosity of the final image. Now whenever you talk about blending modes, you might hear terms like base color, blend color, and color result color. Well, what that basically means is that the base color is the color that you initially had on your image, and in this case, if I turn this off, the visibility of this layer off, the initial color was this one over here. Now, the blend color is basically the color that you use to blend the image with, and that's in this case this brown color that we have in this layer. And the result color is, of course, the color that results out of the blending of these two layers. Now I'm just going to demonstrate some examples in order to show how powerful blending modes can be and how great results they can produce in just a few seconds. Let's just go ahead and see. I have a church over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add some smoke to it coming out. And I have this image from the web, and to select it I'm just going to go Control A or select all, and I'm just going to go edit, copy, or Control Z to actually copy it, and Control V to paste it, or edit, paste. And it's just going to paste it on a new layer, as you can see. And let me just drag it with the move tool, the first tool up top, to about where I want. It seems quite fine over here. And a lot of people might be saying, to remove the black background, you can just make a selection around the smoke and then just delete the black background. Well, you can't do that because you're always going to have those dark areas where the smoke is actually kind of transparent, so it's not going to mix well with the background. The only way to go about it is to actually pick one of those blending modes. And let's just think of what we want to do. Well, what we want to do is we actually want to remove the black background over here, and we just want to keep the smoke, which is actually white. So what is the result going to be? Well, we want to remove the dark tones and we just want to keep the white smoke. It's probably going to be whiter. So what you want to be looking at are those modes. and you can just try them one by one. But you kind of get an idea of how to figure out things. You first think of what you want to do, and then you pick out the category that you're going to be using the blending modes out of, and just pick the one that best fits you. So I'm just going to pick up the first one, and that's lighten. And I'm just going to loop through all of them using my arrow keys. The up arrow key is to move up in this selection list, and the down arrow key to move down. So I'm just going to use the down arrow key, and as you can see, I switched to the screen mode over here, blending mode. And the first lighten mode, that one looks quite good. Screen mode looks a little better. Color dodge doesn't look that good. Linear dodge, well, it looks a little bit too extravagant. And lighter color, maybe. So I guess probably the screen mode is the best mode. And that's the way to go about figuring out which blend modes best fit you whenever you want to have an effect. And as you can see, we actually, in just a few minutes, maybe seconds, we created this great effect on the image. And just by using one of the blending modes. That's just the powerfulness of blending modes. Now let's just go ahead and see another example. And what I've done over here is I've taken the time to actually draw onto this rose. I have this desaturated image of this rose, this black and white image, and I actually painted around the rose. And what we're going to do over here is we're actually going to use blending modes in order to color this rose. So you might be saying, probably it's the last category that we should use, but that's not always the case. That's why you actually have to be a little bit of a pro in order to actually figure things out. That's the difference between the pro and the amateur, that the pro is actually so familiar with all of those blending modes that, it's much easier for him to pick one. But, for most people, it's just going to be fine using this method. And in this case, we're not just going to pick one of those one of this category because, it seems the most suitable. We're actually going to pick out of this whole range of options just because you get unexpected results. We can just rule out those darkening and lightening blending modes, but, those blending modes over here, they could all be fine. And as it turns out, the overlay mode after trying a lot of different options is going to be the best. And you can see we just painted the rose and it's like so great. It looks awesome in this image. Just great results. And then this final image, what I have is a model, and let's just have a look at what we're going to do. Now the first step to go is right click and right click, and you can just duplicate that layer by right clicking over here. Oh, in this area, I'm sorry about that. And you can just duplicate that layer by clicking on duplicate layer. Another neat way to do it is just drag it to the create new layer button, and that's just going to create a copy for you. Now what we're going to do is go in filter, blur, and I know we haven't been taught about filters yet, but just go in filter, blur, and Gaussian blur, and let's just try this effect just for the purpose of this tutorial. We're going to see how they work later on, and put it between 50 and 60. And as you can see, we have kind of a blurred image of this lady over here. And the final thing we're going to do is we're actually going to pick one of those options over here, and we're actually going to pick soft light. That's to me the best option, but it depends on what you want to do. Now, why am I picking this option? Well, if you think about it, let's just look at the final result, and let's just look at the initial image. Well, the final result has a lot more contrast to it. You got those dark areas and those really white areas, and you got this contrast. And knowing the final result, you can actually pick. You can actually be certain that one of those modes is actually going to be the best fit for you. And if you just go over them one by one, you can see which one you best like. But you can see that most of them are quite extravagant. That's why I'm picking soft light. Of course, you might like overlay or even hard light, and that's going to be fine for you. But I just picked soft light, and it created this great effect. Now, for anybody who wants more details of blending modes, I'm going to be making a presentation talking about each one of them at the end of this tutorial. So if you want to stick with me, if you don't, you're going to be just fine skipping this. Now I'm going to go over this presentation real quick just because I don't want to take the time to actually read everything out. But you can feel free to actually pause at any time and look at the information. They're actually quite useful. What I'm going to include in this tutorial is basically an image showing how each different blending mode behaves and a few information about its blending mode. So let's just have a look. This first slide over here, you can actually see the official definition of blending modes by Wikipedia. The next slide, you have your different blending mode categories basically. And it's the first category: normal and dissolve, darkening modes, lightening modes, contrast modes, comparative modes, and tonal or HSL modes. And you can just pause, remember, at any time and just have a look at them. Now, normal and dissolve modes over here, just a little bit of information. And a couple of images showing how normal and dissolve modes behave. Now note that this is the same image that I was using along with the same layer on this tutorial. And this is actually our blend color, and this over here is our base color, and the result color is always going to show up on this side. Over here you can see how the dissolve mode actually behaves, but I've set the opacity in this case to 50% to demonstrate this. Now let's just go on the next slide. Darkening modes: darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, and darker color. Those are the blending modes. And as we said, they always give you darker results than your original base color was. And you can see how the images look after applying the different blending modes. Lightening modes: lighten, screen, color dodge, linear dodge, and lighter color. Those are actually the blending modes. They're just as the darkening modes, they just give you brighter final results than your base color was. And lighten, screen, color dodge, each one how they look after applying the different blending modes to our layer. Contrast modes: soft light, hard light, vivid light, linear light, pin light, hard mix, and that's pretty self-explanatory. They increase the contrast of your final result, of your result color. Let's just have a look over here, the different images and how they work with the blending modes. And then the comparative modes, they use the difference between the two layers in order to determine how the final result is going to look. Difference, exclusion, subtract, and divide blending modes. These are the ones in this category. And you have a look at those different images. As I said, this mode is not used that much. And the final blending modes are the tonal or HSL blending modes, and they use the upper layer in order to edit the hue, saturation, color, and luminosity, as you can see over here, of your final result. Now let's just have a look of your base color basically. Yeah, I'm sorry for that. And this is how they actually get to interact with your base color whenever you use the different blending modes. So that was it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time.